Carolyn Dubie here. What's the play for today? Well, today it's all based around Kleenex. I recently had a whopper of a cold that kind of just sort of knocked me out for a while, thanks to the generosity of my child who was so willing to share germs. But the benefit of that is, as much as I blew my nose, I was actually pretty happy about it because of the Kleenex box. I love this pattern on it. Generic Kleenex's fantastic pattern. What could be better than using this in an art journal page? So that's what I'm going to do today. I am going to use pieces and parts of this Kleenex box to have some creative fun. Well, enough of my talking. Come take a look. Well, the first thing I want to do with my piece of treasure here, this Kleenex box, was deconstruct it. So by opening up the flaps, I actually got a treasure. Those little color swatches, I'm sure that's for how they line up colors and color matching in the printing process, but I think it's awesome treasure. So yeah, I'm going to cut those off and set those aside as precious, and I think I might start checking more empty Kleenex boxes for those. And then I'm just going to cut it into pieces and parts. And I started to think about it, and then I'm like, I'm thinking way too hard about this. I need to just cut. So I am cutting this apart, making some different sizes and shapes without knowing what on earth I'm going to do with them, but I'm going to do something with them. Well, the really long, skinny pieces jumped out at me, and the pattern that's on it, I want to play more on that pattern. I like this pattern so much, I am willing to invest a great deal of time by my standards and fussy cut around part of the pattern. Yes, to me, this is fussy cutting. To those of you that actually do very intricate and detailed kind of cutting, I know you're chuckling, but to me, this is about as fussy as I get about it. Well, the next thing that I needed was some color. So I grabbed some yellow acrylic paint, and I very precisely and carefully spread it gently around the page. Yeah, nothing careful here, nothing gentle, and nothing precise. It's just about covering it with color. And then I did actually step away so the paper was mostly dry before I went on to the next step with some spray ink. I grabbed the stencil called What's the Point, designed by Nat Kalbach, and this stencil with a little bit of color blooms misting through it. I've got the color there on the page, but I've also got a bunch of spray ink still on the stencil. So I'm just going to grab an index card and I'm going to clean up any of that excess ink and get an awesome pattern right on that index card, so that's ready for a future art journaling something. Now I don't feel like waiting for all of that to dry, so I'm just going to roll some of it off, and now it's time to add some pattern and images. I have to say I could spend a lot of time trying to decide if this is exactly the right thing to do, and I decided the best choice was to just glue it down. But for some reason that glue is really dried out and thick, so I'm going to grab another bottle of glue and try this again, because by golly, I am going to get this stuff glued down. Could I have used gel medium? Absolutely. Could I have used a glue stick? I don't know. This is kind of heavy cardboardy feeling to it, so I think I needed something stronger than a glue stick, which is why I grabbed the tacky glue. Well, now I'm going to use that index card that we cleaned up stuff with to protect my flashcard while I'm hitting it with some spray ink. And I didn't really like how it looked there, so I just grabbed some paper towel and tried to wipe it off. And that purple became kind of an orange, but I did love that look of it on the Kleenex box. So that's why I hit it with some puddles. And then I'm going to come back with a brush and just smear that color right onto my Kleenex box, or tissue box. I guess it wasn't officially Kleenex, it was a generic one, so we'll have to call it tissue. And I'm going to start moving color around, because playing with the color, well, it's kind of an addiction for me. And some of it will be done with the spray ink and a baby wipe, like what I did right there. And I might bring in acrylic paint and get some other colors moved around that way. But for me right now, it's all about trying to get the rainbow all over the place on this. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video so far and you'd like to see more of my videos, go ahead and click that subscribe button. That way you'll always know whenever I have a new video out. Well, and if you can't beat them, you join them sometimes. That orange that I had up at the top that I didn't really like so much, well, now I've just grabbed a whole bunch of orange acrylic paint and I'm going to put more orange all over the place. Didn't like it at one moment, and all of a sudden I liked it again. I guess we could say that spray ink there was a great big oops. It really was an opportunity, and now I've got a lot of orange on my page. Well, what's next? I miss my dots. I miss those, so I'm going to bring those back because they kind of got obscured with all the different layers I put on top. So I'm grabbing some white heavy body paint, and I'm just adding them around on top. Now, I didn't wait for anything really to dry and spraying's even still a little damp on the stencil, so is that going to muddy up my white? Yes. And do I care? No. Now, sometimes I like to live on the edge, and what I've got in my hand is that bottle of spray ink from Prima, but I've taken the lid off of it, which means there's a good chance I'm going to spill it. So that's why I'm keeping it directly in my hand to reduce the chance that I'm going to knock this over. And I'm using it just like an inkwell and dipping my paintbrush in there and using that color to very loosely trace around the circles from What's the Point. In the process of putting the lid back onto the spray ink so I wouldn't spill it, some things splattered, and I thought, well, we'll call that one an oops, and now I am just going to do a whole bunch of extra splattering with the leftover ink on the brush. So I've got some really small splatters on my journal, and yes, on the wall too, but maybe I shouldn't have flicked it quite so hard. More images that I want to add in here. These are some of my favorite butterfly stamps. They are from Judikins, and I am using an archival ink, basically a waterproof permanent ink. That way, it doesn't matter what I do on top of it, it's not going to smear. And I always want to capture some thoughts when I'm art journaling, and I'm going to do some scribble journaling. This is partially because I can then write as fast as I think, since I'm not really worried about spelling words correctly or any kind of punctuation, etc., and I'm not thinking one little bit about my handwriting. I'm just sort of letting those ideas kind of jump out of me through my hand. And if you can't read that, never fear, I can't either. I'm just trying to capture the feelings that I have while I'm journaling. And the pen I'm using, it's just a gel pen type pen from the office supply store. So nothing fancy, and it probably will smear if I get it wet. So I need to be aware of that. Final touch here for this is just bringing in some white Stabilo pencil to trace around those butterflies. Well, thanks so much for joining me for this play in my art journal. If you've enjoyed this, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm up to, head on over to my blog at acolorfuljourney.com. Thank you for being a part of this colorful journey.